In this episode of Weekend Spin, the Monkees take back the music. Released in 1967 after the first season of their series concluded, Headquarters was the third studio album by the Monkees. Previously, aside from providing lead and backing vocals, the Monkees had very little active involvement in the production of their first two albums. This not only included songwriting, but also the song's instrumental performances, which was, with only a few minor exceptions, all handled by studio musicians. Even the selection of songs was pretty much out of their hands. The only exception to all of this being Michael Nesmith, who managed to get both track producer and songwriting credit on each of the group's first two albums. But Headquarters would represent a departure from all of this, as the first time that Mickey, Peter, Davey, and Mike began to make substantial contributions to not only the songwriting, but also the instrumental performances and the musical arrangements. Prior to recording Headquarters, Michael Nesmith approached Chip Douglas, who at the time was probably best known for his work with the Turtles, about producing the album. Chip Douglas responded by saying that he had never produced a record in his life. So Nesmith, who now had a few track credits to his name, assured him that he would show him everything he needed to know about producing a record. And with this, the Monkees went from being a TV band to a real band. Hello, this is TJR, and if you're enjoying this video, please show your support by clicking like and clicking subscribe. Thanks so much for your support. Several years back, music writer Robert Kinsler and I hosted an ongoing YouTube series called Music Worth Buying, where we reviewed and discussed albums. For one episode, I suggested that it would be fun to make an episode titled Guilty Pleasures, where we would each discuss an album or artist that we consider to be a musical guilty pleasure. For my pick, I chose the concept album The Elder by Kiss, an album that was largely hated by the band's fan base, but that I always appreciated right from the beginning. By the way, I did make a more in-depth video on that particular album if you want to check it out. I'll leave a link for you. Now, Robert, however, chose to discuss the Monkees as a group in general. And I will always remember my knee-jerk reaction when he first told me this. Now, I didn't say this to his face, but at the time, my inner reaction was, the Monkees? You're going to talk about a fake TV band? Seriously, Robert? I mean, what's next? The Partridge Family? The Brady Kids? But let me step back a bit. When I was a kid, and I mean when I was a kid, we're talking preteen here, I enjoyed watching Saturday morning cartoons. And I enjoyed watching the Monkees, whose reruns were by that time playing on Saturday mornings, right alongside all of those cartoon shows that I enjoyed. But as I became a teenager and really started to get into popular music, I grew to dismiss them as not just a TV band, but a kids' TV band. It became a built-in prejudice that I developed in my teen years, and it stayed with me well into my adulthood. And if you brought up the Monkees, my brain would just shut down and keep repeating TV band, over and over, until you stopped. And as a result, I knew nothing about their history. But as Robert and I talked about the episode, he began to discuss with me their battles with Don Kirshner and the show's producers, and their desire to have more creative input and control of their albums. A battle that culminated with the release of their third album, Headquarters, and with them gaining the creative input that they desired. Up until that point, I had just always assumed that the Monkees were fake musicians, actors just pretending to be musicians. It wasn't until Robert told me otherwise that I began to realize that I had been allowing a prejudice from my teen years influence me as an adult, keeping me completely in the dark to the fact that all four members of the Monkees had backgrounds in music, that they were musicians who were also actors, and they started a TV show about a fictional band, and that they fought for creative autonomy from the machine that was guiding them musically. And this is the thing that really amazed me about them. They actually cared. I mean, they could have just driven the gravy train. They had fame, they had money. Why spoil a good thing? Yes, they started as a manufactured band, but in the end, they cared more about being taken seriously as a musical entity. And I think there is something to be admired and learned from that. Track 1, You Told Me.
You told me you'd always say you told me.
This song opens with a goofy count-off showing that even though they wanted to be taken seriously as musicians, they never took themselves too seriously. Written by Michael Nesmith, this track feels like it could have fit just fine on the Beatles' Rubber Soul or Revolver albums. Of course, the fact that it has a very similar bass line to Taxman might have something to do with that. Bass lines aside, these are two completely different songs. It's also one of the album's strongest tracks, and Michael Nesmith gives a very authoritative vocal performance. Track 2, I'll Spend My Life With You.
I'll spend my life with you.
Written by the team of Bobby Hart and Tommy Boyce, this track offers a very nice blend of country western tinged pop, with Michael Nesmith contributing pedal steel guitar, something he would do on a number of tracks for Headquarters, and Mickey Dolenz delivering a very sincere vocal. Track 3, Forget That Girl.
Forget that girl. She'll never make you happy.
Written by the album's producer Chip Douglas under the name of Douglas Farthing Hatfield, or was it Douglas Farthing Hatfield under the name of Chip Douglas? I'm not sure. Regardless, Chip Douglas had originally presented this track for consideration to the head of Scream Gems Music, Don Kirshner, who passed on it because he felt it had a negative message. Now, my first reaction to this track was to describe it as a nice bit of cosmopolitan Motown-styled pop designed to appeal to young teenage girls, the audience that the Monkees wanted to get away from. But later, I would hear the song differently when I read Chip Douglas talking about how he wrote the song as advice to himself. In real life, he had fallen hard for a girl that had a guy she was already crazy about, and he was basically just telling himself to move on. Personally, having been in that situation in both my youth and my early adulthood more than once, I really wish I could have given myself that kind of advice. Davy Jones' smooth vocals fit the song's cosmopolitan stylings perfectly. Track 4, Band 6. Another bit of musical goofing off. During the time of their first two releases, the Monkees got their share of they don't know how to play their own instruments criticism, and this track almost feels like a comedic response to those criticisms. Side note, in Peter Tork's commentary for the Monkees' DVD release of the series, he described Davy Jones as a good drummer, and had the live performance lineup been based solely on playing ability, it would have been Jones on drums. But apparently, the show's producers wanted him in front and not behind a kit. Now, Mickey Dolenz, on the other hand, was a novice on drums, and yet he taught himself how to play in order to fit into the musical role that the TV show had cast him in. And when I listen to Headquarters, I think to myself, he made it through this album by sheer force of determination, and he played on almost every single track on the album. You have to really admire that. Track 5, You May Just Be the One.
Someone to stand beside them, and you just may be the one.
Another really strong Mike Nesmith pen tune. Another strong, confident vocal performance, with the other Monkees contributing strong backing vocals. Track 6, Shades of Grey.
There is no black or white, only shades of gray.
A really nice, thoughtful tune from writers Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, with well-blended vocals from Davy Jones and Peter Tork. Peter also plays some very nice piano on this track, In interviews, producer Chip Douglas mentions that he noticed how good Peter was on keyboards and decided to have him play any keys needed on the album, adding that this is why, as producer, he played most of the bass guitar. He noted that Peter was a good bass player, but that by taking most of the bass guitar duties, it allowed them to work out the songs and record as a combo, Mike on guitar, Mickey on drums, Peter on keys, and himself on bass, leaving Davey singing lead and backing vocals and providing various percussion instruments. I should add that none of this was a strict designation during the making of the album. There was plenty of instrumental switching off throughout the recording process, and on some tracks, Mickey or Peter might play guitar, and Mike might play organ, etc., etc. Track 7, I Can't Get Her Off of My Mind.
And I don't think I'll ever get her off of my mind.
Another track written by Bobby Hart and Tommy Boyce. It's a nice enough song, and Davy Jones is the right choice for the lead vocals, and he definitely makes the best of it. But I really don't feel like this song belongs on the album. It seems out of place alongside the rest of the album's more garage band aesthetic. Track 8, For Pete's Sake.
And all we have to be is free.
Written by Peter Tork and Joseph Richards. For my money, this is the best song on the whole album, and Mickey Dolenz just knocks it out of the park with his vocals. By the way, this track would also become the closing credits song for season 2 as well. Side note, sometime after Robert had changed my mind regarding the Monkees, he said to me that he thought Mickey Dolenz was one of rock's most underappreciated lead vocalists. And I would have to agree. Track 9, Mr. Webster.
Everyone in town knew Mr. Webster. He worked at the bank.
Another song by Bobby Hart and Tommy Boyce. And this Simon and Garfunkel-esque folk song works a lot better than the last one, as it showcases a great blend of vocals from Davy and Mickey. Track 10, Sunny Girlfriend.
She's my sunny girlfriend, and she's never less.
Another Mike Nesmith pen tune. Maybe not as strong as the previous two, but a solid track nonetheless, with Mickey singing harmony. Track 11, Zilch.
Zilch, China Clipper calling Alameda. China Clipper calling Alameda. Zilch, China Clipper calling.
A bit of enjoyable spoken word silliness, but then suddenly at the end of it, it becomes dark and ominous sounding, with its whispered dialogue smothered in delay and reverb.
Zilch, Zilch,
Now, I noticed that there are sections of Frank Zappa's 1968 album, We're Only in It for the Money, that uses a similar technique.
I know he's sitting in there in the control room now, listening to everything I say.
Now, I've read that Zappa was friends with the Monkees, and I wonder if he got this idea from them. Who knows? Of course, Chip Douglas has mentioned in interviews how George Harrison once told him that we all pinch here and there from others. Track 12, No Time.
See the rapper Homer Solman, what did you expect? No time, no time, no time, no time for you.
This is a fun blues rocker that could have easily been recorded by CCR. This song is credited to album engineer Hank Chicolo. Hopefully I've said that correctly. Reportedly, the band gave him writing credit as a thank you for his patience while they learned how to record their own record for the first time. Track 12, Early Morning Blues and Greens.
A distant night bird mocks the sun. I wake as I...
Written by Diane Hildebrand and Jack Keller, this one really stands out as one of the stronger tracks on the album. It features a nice mix of 60s pop with hints of darker psychedelic music, and it makes interesting use of percussion effects too. Davy Jones gives one of his most sublime vocal performances. Track 13, Randy Scousket.
Why don't you cut your hair? Why don't you live a
This is the only one written by Mickey Dolenz, and it's a real banger to end the album on. It's also a very good example of making use of musical extremes. This one starts with some very dark timpani percussion that feels more like it belongs on the soundtrack of a motion picture battle scene. It then transitions into this very goofy piano-driven two-step. But then after the second verse, it transitions again to full-on aggressive, with the track's opening battle-style percussion underneath it. Mickey Dolenz wrote the song about a recent trip to London and the morning after the Beatles threw him and the rest of the band a party. He even name drops the Beatles in the lyrics with the line, "The four kings of EMI are sitting stately on the floor." I like that description. I currently own this album on both CD and vinyl. My CD version is a 2 CD deluxe edition. I was actually introduced to this edition by Robert Kinsler when we did our Music Guilty Pleasures episode of the Music Worth Buying show some years back. This was released at around that time. This particular edition contains both the stereo and mono mix of the album, plus a ton of bonus tracks. And of the two versions, on CD, honestly, I preferred the mono version over the stereo version. I felt that the songs came off as more pronounced in mono and sounded perhaps just a little bit muddier in stereo, believe it or not. However, though, in spite of that, I really enjoyed this vintage stereo LP copy that I picked up at an antique store for, I think, like, what, $7 maybe? I cleaned it up and it sounded really, really great. In the present day, I feel that sometimes too much of our culture champions style over substance, especially when it comes to music. I feel that our culture has become more impressed by fame than by talent, and less impressed by a truly great song as we are by the lifestyle that that song represents. Sadly, I feel that if the Monkees happened now, the response would be, hey, we're famous. What else matters? But in the late 60s, being musically legit mattered a whole lot more. Like I said earlier, they could have just driven the gravy train, but instead they decided to risk it all for musical legitimacy. Headquarters is a solid album. It has some great songs on it, but it's also a statement about taking control of your own musical destiny. This is TJR, and those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments. A big shout out to my Patreon supporters. Patreon supporters do receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. Very shortly, you're going to see some links for some other videos that I have created that I think you might find enjoyable and stimulating. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.